Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I love every time we get together with her because we get insight, kind of a behind the scenes look at the life of an interior designer and her team. Today, we're going to learn about something that I didn't even know existed. It's like Fashion Week for furniture, and it's coming up in about a week or so, and she will be there. And she's the woman behind Livable Luxury. It is Nicole Fisher on the program. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. So this market thing they call North Carolina, it's going to be.
Yes, High Point, North Carolina, the furniture capital of the US.
Hmm. And what are you expecting to see when you go there? Like what's and it's a yearly thing, correct?
It's actually twice a year.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yes, it's
Hmm.
twice a year. But I would say the spring is the bigger one. It's the bigger show.
What's it like? Is it at a convention hall and you see, different types of furniture? Like what do they do?
It is one of the most overwhelming experiences of my life.
Wow.
It's set up like a college campus. It is a multitude of different buildings, and you basically walk or take shuttles to each one of these buildings, and within the buildings, tens and tens of thousands of square feet, composing of thousands and thousands of vendors.
Wow. So the newest, the latest and the greatest when it comes to domestic furniture is on display.
Yes. The newest, they lean into trends. They lean into, what's hot right now, what's coming in for the fall. This is kind of the showcase. I love to call it Fashion Week for furniture because it's showing what is to come to get you excited so you could see it, see how anything would sit or feel, maybe tweaks if you are going to go the custom route, and just kind of
Mm.
get an overall glimpse of, what's coming out next.
How does what happens there influence what you do?
So what happens there is, so a lot of people go and will place orders immediately. So then they know
Oh.
that within the next, few months they're coming in. That's typically more for like retailers. For me, I go and I have a list of usually what I'm trying to find or what I'm looking for.
Mm.
Things that I necessarily am always looking for, like a really good dining chair or a dining table that extends. Some things that, you just have to look at and get excited by. I keep those in my pocket and then bring them back to my team so we know and keep that in the back of our minds for our any projects coming up. And then we could, go back to that inspiration and then pull it when we need it.
So you're seeing the go-to pieces that it's on your mind. And would it
Yeah.
also be like a client? Let's say you're doing a design for a client, they're really particular about their bedroom, let's just say, and it's in real time. You're working with them. Is that in the back of your mind where you're going to look and say, I see bedroom pieces, the Joneses need the bedroom. Are you cognizant of that when you're walking around this amazing
Always.
situation? Really?
Always. I mean, the clients take up so much brain space, whether or not I'm trying to do that or not. That is just part
Mm.
of the job. I'm always thinking about these people. And if something just catches my eye that might be perfect for a project that we're working on right now, 100%, we like to lean into it.
So I would imagine the other part of this experience is also seeing the trends, where we're going with furniture.
Yeah, always. Where we're going with technology, where we're
Mm.
going with manufacturing, where we're going with fabric creation. There's so much new stuff and how things are made and the way that they're made. And brands are always trying to, come up with the newest, latest, not only for looks, but also practicality and like technology.
What would you say if you looked at the last, I don't know, 5, 7, whatever years? What has changed in terms of maybe fabric, in terms of materials? Yeah, talking furniture here.
Yeah, so fabric, I would say there's been such a shift toward performance-based fabrics. So keeping the aesthetic, but ramping up on what it's made out of to make it like bulletproof. There are so many companies that used to just focus on this idea, and it would be considered like an outdoor fabric or
Right.
just a performance fabric. But those notoriously felt awful. So there's been such a shift with these companies trying to lean into the materials used, which is like an acrylic or I have vendors who use plastic bottles that have been like deconstructed into yarns and fibers to create fabrics. And at the end of the day, it's plastic, so you can hose it down and it's absolutely viable for everyday use. So there's been this huge trend toward fabrics that do not look it, but happen to be indestructible.
I have two cats. Uh, yeah, bring some of that back because I definitely need it. And when I selected the couch, I kind of moved in a rush, I was like, yeah, I'll take that over there. I didn't think of I didn't have the cats at that time, a
Hmm.
couple of months after, but I didn't think of how the fabric was woven and that if it was
Yes.
a closer weave, that they probably couldn't do any damage or so much to it. Um, is it, does it feel comfortable? Because I'm getting the visual, like the outdoor furniture where it's kind of like rough there.
Yeah.
Is it comfortable?
Now it is. Yes.
Okay. Mm,
The technology involved in these fabrics is astounding. With how it looks and feels, you would never ever know. I love doing these tests with my clients when they come in. I will pour coffee on it or water, anything, and just watch this puddle happen. That it never penetrates the fabric; it just stays on top. That you can just
crazy.
blot it right off. It's wild.
I was at a restaurant this weekend and I even commented on the napkins. They were cloth by
Yeah.
far, but so uncomfortable and so not absorbent. It almost sounds like what you're talking about. Like, why are you giving us napkins where
Right.
anything you do, it's just you forget about blotting, a spill. Maybe you can just wipe your mouth with it, but it reminds me of that. It's like kind of the same thing where it's just very non-permeable when it comes to a liquid. What
Right.
about
No,
materials?
napkins you're gonna want to be able to soak in that liquid. That's the whole point.
One more thing. One more thing. Um, Material and furniture. Anything that's are we looking at more metals mixing with wood lately?
Yeah, I mean, I think that stuff tends to go in waves. Right now, there is a huge shift toward metal, um, and incorporating metal into maybe an unusual way. Accents of metal, definitely leaning into stainless steel versus a brass that was really popular for a while.
Hmm.
And then wood, I am finding that it's really what you can do with wood. So that's what's been like really exciting. And I'm kind of seeing it move in that direction. Unusual ways to incorporate wood, unusual ways of the wood kind of curving around furniture that you wouldn't necessarily think about, or a detail done or carved out in the wood. Just taking something that's kind of been there, done that, and what can we do with it to make it feel fresh and new again?
What about the style in general? Anything that is kind of nostalgic? Is that back? Like, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, I mean, 90s are very, very in right now.
Hmm.
Um, and we're kind of seeing, I mean, same with 90s, but we're seeing this kind of maximal vibe everywhere. These pared down white spaces are made their way out, and we're back to kind of these homes that are a lot more layered and lived in and collected over time and feel like someone lives there, a family lives there and enjoys it and loves it, and you could spill a glass of wine on the floor and like the whole thing won't be ruined. And that's really like what we do so well. So I'm so happy to see this, this trend kind of go in that way where these homes are so much more comfortable and don't just look like these like white museum pieces.
I'm so over that too, especially the white kitchens. I don't know if they're still trending, but I'm just done with it.
No,
Done with
gone.
it. Mm.
Yeah.
What about like the 60s, 70s kind of vibe? I was at a distillery 2 weeks ago, and I felt like I got transported back. It was the freakiest, weirdest thing. Is that a thing now?
Yeah, I mean, I think people like to lean heavily into these kind of trends, and it makes so much sense with like a restaurant or something that you can act as a transportation, really, just as you said. I think how you felt is exactly how they wanted the customer to feel, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, for a home, you kind of want to think about it in a more longevity, sense. So it's cool to do it for a day, but is that something that you want to do every day? And so we kind of like to not pinpoint a certain era or time period, but just take nods and notes from all of these things and then put them together to just make it feel evolved.
I love the way you say that because sometimes I would be afraid that somebody would get pigeonholed into a trend like the white kitchen, and
Yeah.
a lot of money gets spent on that, and 5 years later, what do you got there? A big investment.
Yeah.
So I would imagine you just want to blend your likes, maybe a little bit of what's trending, maybe a little of technology if it is a kitchen, and come up with this is why we need you because I wouldn't even know,
Exactly.
right. No, it's true. It's true. Like somebody could say, you know, I like blues, I like greens, I like a little retro. I love the TV show Mad Men from back in the day, and I
Yeah.
love that decor, but I don't want to be married to, a 60s vibe. But I like some of the styles and all of that. If somebody starts describing that to you, are you able to put it all together?
Yeah, absolutely. Just based on what you said, I would find some really cool mid-century bar that had some secret compartments. I would make it vintage, and all of a sudden you have this little bit of Mad Men in your home without going too far in one direction. It's
Gotcha.
just that special place that Don Draper would have made a cocktail and that you can make a cocktail. So I think little hints of that. I love when clients actually have a perspective and they like certain things that actually makes it a little easier to jump off of. Um, but I don't want to go too far unless you bought this really retro ranch in the middle of California and it made sense. But if we're in New York and the house is not a mid-century ranch, I don't want to go too far into that, but elements of it is what makes it you and unique, but still make sense for the house in general.
Have you ever had situations where you're working with a client and they think they know what they want, but you identify that that wasn't really what they want by showing them other stuff where let's say, I like tropical. It's always been my passion. Now, does that mean I want a living room that looks that way? Maybe, but maybe not. So I might say, yeah, I like seafoam. I like tropical. This is my vibe. I like it. A piece of coral over here, blah, blah, blah. And you may say, well, okay, great. You ever think about this? And then the client says, oh my gosh, wow, that's awesome. Has that ever happened?
Totally. It happens all the time. I have clients that are basically on one spectrum or the other. They think they know what they want, or they have no idea and have never picked up a magazine in their life. So the clients that really know what they want or give you like a real direction is nice because they give you a jumping off point, but when they pigeonhole themselves too much into, a specific theme or a specific type of room that they're trying to accomplish, all I would do is pull out elements of that. I'll pull out, the color elements or something to give you that vibe without
Yeah.
being too literal. It's our job to interpret what you mean and make it make sense.
And a lot of us pilot on what we know. So it could have been 15 years ago you were into, I'm going hypothetical here, a tropical vibe. But I feel that we're always our tastes, everything is changing. And they say like every 5, 7 years, we're different. We change. We
Yeah,
evolve. We move forward. So you may just go back to your as a client, the fallback and say, "Yeah, this is what I like," but you're over it. but you don't know what you like
right,
now until you show them.
right.
That's like a
No,
cool thing to
it
know that you can
is
do that.
Absolutely. And it is an evolution. And I like that if we're doing these spaces that feel more collected over time, they can still add to it. They could still, in that 5 years when they get the itch to do something else, taking the same really well-made chair or sofa and reupholstering it in
Mm.
something that maybe excites them then is not as big of an investment as redoing the whole room, but would totally transform the space.
So to your point, building a video studio right on the other side of the glass, and I had them
Yeah.
already, these black leather chairs. And they served a purpose for seating or whatever, but now we're going to use them on a set and it's all good. So I'm like, you know what? What about if we want to do a lighter set and change it all up? We got covers for the chairs, minimal expense. Once we figured out how to put them on, oh my God. Like you would never even know. It's amazing how it
Yeah.
changed the whole look and for minimal expense. I'm like, I was blown away. And then we changed the curtains, just again, a different vibe, different set, one darker, one lighter. Not a lot of work, but wow, the impact of these just little
Yeah.
changes that you can make.
Little changes. Totally.
Hmm. We never talked about your personal passion, like your personal
Oof.
style.
My
Or is
personal
this
style.
a
My
moving
personal
target?
style. No, I mean, you know what? It does evolve. And I think so much of it depends on like where I'm living. Um, my house is a center hall colonial, so it's very traditional, but my taste is not very traditional. However, it still needs to make sense in such a traditional house. So there are elements that are
Hmm.
a little bit traditional in there, and then some additions of unique and a little weird and crazy. I like to consider it beautiful chaos, is like my mantra. It really makes it like when you look at it, it looks like it makes sense and it's beautiful. But if you try to dissect each piece or each like corner of the room, you're like, how did this happen? How did this get here? And I love to lean into the vintage component for that reason specifically because that's where like the unique stuff comes to play and really shines. But my house is really collected over, years and years and years. And there's just a lot of like fun, funky things in there, but really tailored and muted so that it makes sense for like the architecture of the house.
Now, this is what you do. So, do you walk through your house occasionally and say, hmm, I don't know if I like that anymore? Or when you're out somewhere, let's say market, looking at furniture, in the back of your mind is like, that table would actually really look great, blah, blah, blah. Is that always going through your mind? Or since it's yours, it's done, and then you move on?
Every second of every day.
Okay, I figured that. I figured that. Yeah. Hmm.
It's the one thing my husband and I fight about constantly is I'm just never satisfied. I'm never done. The room is never complete.
Hmm.
So, and if he happens to go out for a couple hours, when he comes back, something's moved.
That's great. That is great. Now, when you use the word chaos, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious, you as a person, this doesn't reflect what you do and how you do it, but I'm just curious. You use that word.
Yeah.
Are you, best description, structured in your life, scheduled in your life, things are planned, it's not really chaotic, or are you kind of free form?
I'm extremely structured, extremely type A. Yeah.
Mm. I detected that, and honestly,
Yeah.
that's why, and that's a good thing. But I was
Yeah.
curious
Right.
when you use the word chaos, so it's planned chaos.
Planned chaos. Absolutely.
Hmm.
It certainly has a structure to it. There's a method behind the madness, but I think every creative person is chaotic in some way and in their process. Um, because if it was a formula that I can just give to anyone, anyone could do it. There's some element of, chaos that has to go on in your brain to be able to be creative, in my opinion.
I talked with somebody recently and do a lot of podcasts on the subconscious, right?
Mm.
So they feel, and I kind of subscribe to this, that when you're creative, there's a piece of you that reflects on the past. So maybe you've done something before, or you've used this, or you've used that. and then you integrate that with the creative part of your mind. So it isn't always, it's a fresh idea.
Hmm.
Fresh. Not really, but
Yeah.
partly that. Like when an artist is going to paint, white canvas, what am I going to paint? I start with some brush strokes. That connects to things I've done in the past. Maybe,
Hmm.
add this color to that color, but the overall intent is a brand new canvas. So I'm wondering if that's the way it goes for you. It's based on some things you've done in the past and how you put things together. But this house that you're working with, and that one, they're all totally different, completely
Yeah.
different. Is that the way your mind works?
I think so. I think that's the correct way to do it for where we are because we need to have a starting point. We need to have something to work off of. And if a client is not so directive in what they want to or what they're inspired by and what we should work on, the our team has to create that to work off of. So we all think of this project from the same kind of like based structure and then build up from there. But so many times, but probably all the time now that I think about it, it's based off of another project we've done or another idea or another thing that we had made that maybe we want to do it differently. Um, they do all come from something.
Inspired from somewhere. And I guess that maybe
Yeah,
that's why it's called experience, because you've done it before and
right,
it's never going to be the same. Maybe
right.
never even close to the same, albeit if you like this piece of furniture for one client and then you use it for another because they liked it. That's maybe the only similarity there. Your husband, is he kind of like freeform, just kind of wing it?
Oh yes, he is a go with the flow kind of guy. It's
Hmm.
just like wing it and see what happens.
Are you an Aquarian or a Virgo?
I'm a Gemini.
Wow.
Yes.
Hmm. Usually, in my experience, they're not, I don't want to use the word structured, but usually they're the ones that are kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
You broke that mold for me. Like seriously. And I think about except for maybe one, and my daughter is a Gemini, and she's a little more structured than other Geminis I know, where they're just like, whatever, I don't like worry about anything and just roll
Yeah,
off
yeah,
my
yeah.
shoulder. And interesting.
Yeah, totally.
I was
Nope,
actually
Gemini.
hired by call it a celebrity, we'll leave it at that, to work with them on their branding, etc. They hired me because I'm a Virgo. I'm not even kidding.
Oh, that's so funny.
Literally said it. I mean, they have part of what they do is intuitiveness, but they said, I know what I'm getting. It's going to be detailed. There's going to be structure, et cetera. So that's why I asked if you were Virgo. I've never heard
Yeah,
that the Gemini thing. Yeah, that's a mind
that's
blow.
funny.
Yeah.
You know what? I think my Gemini comes into like me business and me personal because so much of my personality is just like structured and very directive on the business, and I am very, very carefree in my personal life. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
and I like to separate the two as much as possible.
Interesting. For the most part, a Gemini, in my view, is very social. So you would need to be in terms of
Yeah.
what you do. Wow, super cool. Wonderful talking with you today. I want to go to market with you. Like sounds like a fun road trip or flight. How do we
Oh
find
yeah.
you, Nicole? Somebody wants to connect with you, pick your brain on a design. Again, you're in the New York metro area,
Yeah.
but a lot of this can be done virtually, consultations and all of that. How do we find you?
Yeah, our website, bnrinteriors.com or Instagram at bnrinteriors. Shoot me a DM and we will chat.
Awesome. Great talking with you today.
Same here.
Appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.